All right, third shot at Canvas tutorials. This time we are going to take a look at outcomes, assessments, and rubrics. All three of those turn into course assessments. So ICC, you are required to do course level assessments inside of Canvas. So might as well teach you how. First thing we need to do is set some outcomes. For the most part, setting up outcomes are pretty quick. This whole box looks scary. It's not. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit an outcome. Okay. This outcome, name the outcome. For us, we're just going to say outcome 1. Friendly name is optional. You can call it whatever you want. Okay. Now then, important parts. Whatever you type here, students can see. So be careful. If you are using an outcome and it just so happens to be the test question itself, you might not want to type the test question in there because the student will be able to see it. Okay? Which is generally not good. Okay? You're like, cool. Well, how do I save it? Well, if you just saw it, there's some other things we got to do. Now then, Canvas does great. It does a lot of things really well. Assessment is questionable at times. So, every time that you are setting up an outcome, you are going to have to change some things. First and foremost is this criterion ratings. So the criterion ratings, all you really need to know is that this exceeds expectations, you can delete. Don't want it. The other thing you're going to have to do, this meets expectations, you need to change this down to 1 point. All right? Change it to 1. It's important. Mastery at 1 point. This is required for you to get quickly usable assessment data. If you don't, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. Canvas is going to pull out a number. It's going to be like 2.4. Like, that doesn't help me. So make sure that your meets expectations at 1 point, does not meet expectations is at 0 for a total of 1 point. Mastery at 1, and then you have the calculation method. Decaying average just says that the most recent result counts as more mastery than subsequent attempts or previous attempts. For the most part, this is going to be a confusing number. You can use this to sort of average them out. So if you only have 2 assignments that are going to use this outcome, you can say, hey, it's mastery at 50%. If you had 3 assignments, you would say it's 33%. If you had, 10 assignments, you would say it's worth 10%. So I honestly would say don't use decaying average. Instead, you can use the n number of times, so they have to achieve mastery twice if you're assigning 5 of these. The most recent score, or just the highest score. I honestly use the highest score in my classes because it's helpful for me, and I only test them over at 1 time. So for me, I'm going to say mastery at 1, and this is going to be the highest score. Go ahead and hit save, and so now outcome 1 is ready. Well, most of us are going to have between 4 and 9 outcomes. So again, outcome 2. Going to delete the exceeds expectations, meets expectations at 1, mastery at 1, highest score, save. And you just keep on going and going. We're going to do one more. So outcome 3, delete 1, mastery at 1, highest score, save. So now we have these 3 outcomes. Cool. What the heck are we going to do with these now? Well, we are, we'll talk about this outcome measuring stuff here in a little bit. So we have an outcome. How do we get an outcome into an assignment? So let's look at this syllabi quiz. If I edit the quiz, like, well, there's nothing here. Go through and it's like, cool, what am I supposed to do? Well, I can show a rubric. There's no rubric. Aha, add a rubric. The default name is some rubric. I highly suggest you fix it. So, syllabi rubric. Okay. If you already have a rubric, you can find one. Downside of finding one, if you have a lot, you have a lot. And so it's going to pull up all of your courses. You're like, all right, these are all the rubrics you got. So we're just going to do a syllabi rubric. And we are going to say that this criteria right here, we actually don't want. And we're going to instead find an outcome, outcome 1. And this is the weird part. Unclick use criterion for scoring. You don't want it. If you want outcome 3, select it, pop that one off, and hit import. If you notice, this rubric is worth 0 points, meaning that like even if I select this one meets expectations, it doesn't add to the entire score, which is useful because this quiz is only worth 2 points. You can free write comments when assessing students, just saying like, hey, you can assign the points yourself by saying like, yeah, you met it, but you were awful at it, or that you did amazing. Never click remove points because this means that you'll never meet or not meet expectations. It's useful in our final step. And then hide the score total from assessment results you don't want. Let's say though that this is for a quiz. These are the only 2 that we want. On a quiz, you really just want your outcomes and that's it. So we'll create the rubric. And the rubric is in there. So if I want to grade this, it will show the rubric eventually whenever I go to save it. Okay. So we'll talk about speed grader here in a little bit. What about the final? Okay. Let's say that we need to add a rubric to the final. Remember, this was a submission on paper. And because it was a submission on paper, we get the added benefit of just adding a rubric right here. So we're going to add a rubric. Again, you're going to title it, so the final rubric or rubric for the final. But on this one, let's say like it's a paper, right? So they're submitting it. I want them to actually see like the point values. So I can go through and I can edit the criterion of saying like spelling. Spelling. Update criterion. And you can change the ratings. So full marks means no freaking hell spelling errors. Oop. Update rating. This one would be numerous. Spelling. Spelling errors. And what if I want something in between there? Well, I got this little plus sign here. We can add one and we can be like, some. Some. Spelling errors, and we can name them so intermediate. We can name this one full marks, no marks, intermediate, and we can make it worth 10 points. Add another criterion. So there was spelling, let's use word choice. Update criterion, Now let's say that instead of 5 points, word choice was really big on this assignment, so we're going to do 20 points, no points, or 10 points. Grading title, meh, update it. Or you can do freeform, where you are able to choose between 1 and 10, or 0 and 20. Most of us, though, if we're using a rubric, we want those defined points. So we got spelling, we got word choice. This whole thing is worth 30, so we'll add another one, do a new criterion, and we will say conclusion. And this one is going to be all or nothing at a whole 20 points. Okay. So we will do that. And then let's say that this actually meets outcome 2. Again, before you click import, you're going to remove the criterion from scoring. Because now, if you notice, my total is still 50 points. If I just import this, I guess it's actually behaving for once. It's still 50. Okay. Sometimes, though, this gets added into your final score, so I, for the most part, will say if I'm going to add this outcome, I do not want to use this criterion for scoring. Aha, there it is. I just didn't have the button clicked. I unclicked it. So, outcome 2, it is worth 1 point or 0 points, adding a total point, meaning that my rubric is now worth 51 points, and I don't want that. So again, I'm going to delete it, add the outcome, remove it from scoring, import. It's now worth 50 points still, and I still get my 1 point or no points, which is very important in the future. So we are going to create this rubric. All right, we have all of these rubrics. Now it's time to actually use them. How? Well, SpeedGrader. So SpeedGrader, the test student, we're going to go ahead and give them a 1.5. Why not? So you can always input a grade and override whatever thing is here, whatever grade is given. So in order to get to that through assignments, we're going to click on home. We're going to click on quizzes because it was a quiz, syllabi quiz, and then over here on the right you got two options, moderate quiz and SpeedGrader. So if you click on SpeedGrader, it pops open and it says, hey, you know what? Oops, syllabi quiz, they got 1.5, it saves, and we're going to open up this rubric. This rubric, you're going to say, it didn't meet, save. And so it means that the student has met outcome 1, but did not meet outcome 3. And if you need a quick reminder of what outcome 1 was, there it is. You can also do comments. You can download the comments that you've made, and then you just hit, well, done. You don't have to hit submit. If you've messed up on this, just hit view rubric again and say like, oh, misclicked. You actually got both of those right. So hit save, and again, it will say 0 points, but that's because this rubric is worth 0 points. If I go over to the final, they got, oh, why did I make it so big? 3, that many points, which was really high. So 90, a little low. 156, 20. Sure, I don't know. Okay. Save. Okay. Save. Boop. And so you can be like, hey, this rubric says they got 30 points, so you got 30 points. that's that. So rubrics are really great. Sometimes they auto-fill that up there, sometimes they don't, but we have this. So outcome 2 is ready. Outcome 1 and 3 have been used. So what do we do with these outcomes? Well, grades. Grades are a thing. This person has a really bad grade. So outcomes, you're going to be assessing them throughout the semester. So whenever you design your assignments, it's really best to also include those outcomes. And from here, you got Gradebook, Learning Mastery, Individual View, and History. So individual view lets you look at an individual student. So you can, since there's only one student, I think, there it goes. You can say, all right, it's all sections, alphabetically, sort assignments alphabetically, view ungraded as 0, and select a student, this one. And so I can see that they have 12.5% on quizzes. They got a paltry grade on their final, and their final grade is a lovely 7.5%. If I view ungraded as actual grades, they have a 56% because the prompts isn't included yet. You can always go to the next assignment, or no assignment selected, just says like all of them, and then you can filter by the actual assignment. So what did they get on the assignment? And then this one also says, hey, as a whole, how did everybody else compare? Next assignment is the quiz, the prompt, and it says, hey, you are missing. If you need to excuse a student, you can always excuse a student from an assignment at that point. And move on to the next one. Writing prompt, we won't excuse him from that one. And so you have final grades like this. If you don't like that view, you can always go up to the right and say, instead of individual group, I want to do gradebook. I say gradebook. Sometimes you have to hit refresh. So if you need to excuse a student, you can always type EX, and that will excuse a student from the assignment. If you don't want them to have a grade, make sure you hit the delete key. If you want a 0, hit a 0. Let's excuse them from this one. Well, it doesn't do a whole lot of their grade, but it gives them something. Okay. You can always go to the speed grader right through here by hitting this arrow over here, and it says like, hey, these are the options: none, late, missing, excused, and then you can always pop in to speed grader. There you go. That's the back way. Then to get back from speed grader, you just hit gradebook. So this was supposed to be about assessment, and here we are talking about the gradebook. Well, that's because inside a gradebook there is also learning mastery. So if we pop over to learning mastery, we have these outcomes, outcome 1, 2, and 3. And if you notice, we met all of these outcomes. The student did amazing, right? Well, let's see what happens when a student doesn't do amazing on one of them. So let's go back into the syllabi quiz because it's easier. Go into speed grader, view the rubric. We did not meet outcome 3. Save. Back to the gradebook. In to learning mastery. All right. Of course, why you gotta make me a liar? Syllabi quiz, go. Outcome 3 did not meet. Save. Okay, gradebook. refresh. Mastery. There it goes. Sometimes it just needs a little bit of time to refresh itself. So if you notice, we have this one met, this one did not. Got a nice little color code over here. And the best part is you can export this. So you can hide outcomes with no reports if you want one in the middle. You can hide students with no results. So if you have a student that literally has done nothing all the semester long, you can just be like, nah, I don't really care about them assessment-wise. We're not going to include them. But the nice part is this number up here at the top will range from 1 to 0, and the numbers in between representing the percent. So if this one here was like a 0.6, that means that 60% of the students met that outcome. It's really handy whenever you are trying to do assessment in bulk at the end of a semester. What else? What else? What else? What else? Gradebook. Is there anything else on Gradebook that we need to talk about? You can curve grades. I highly suggest you do not curve grades because their idea of curving grades does weird things. It goes crazy. I don't like their curving grades. It's pretty awful. You do have grade posting policies so that you can be like, hey, I'm going to automatically just means that whenever you enter a grade, it pushes the update like that instant. Manually says that you will post grades, like you click a button and like that's when the grades get posted. I don't quite know why you would do that, but I'm sure there's a reason for it. You can set default grades of like, so the default is a 5 because they showed up, and then whenever they don't show up, you can be like, oh, well, the default, this person earned a 0. So there's some things that you can do with that. You can sort individual parts by, missing, late, high, low. The cool part is on assignments, you can, whenever you don't have something worth a bazillion points, you can say that, hey, you know what, that assignment was actually late by like 3 days. You're like, cool, why would I care about a late assignment? Well, also, these things are amazing. You can arrange by the modules first to last. You can arrange by the assignment names. I do modules for reasons. There it is. Over on the far right is this little cog. Since you are in the gradebook, you can do late policies. So automatically deduct to late assignments. The lowest possible is just saying that the lowest they could ever earn is a 15%, and every day they lose 20%. Update. So now if I went and said, look, like this one is missing, so I still get a 0, but if it's late and I give them a 5, it changes to a 1.5. So it's kind of neat. And it goes through and says like, all right, well, you know what? This was actually submitted on time. So I'm going to give you the full 5. If it's late, it will say, this is what you gave them. This is the late penalty, and this is the final grade. And it's really helpful in determining if like the math is done correctly, because it also says like, it was really just 3 days late. Or it was really just 1 day late. So now it's worth 3 points because it's now just 2-point penalty. So This really helps whenever you are having students submit something. The downside is if you have a due date associated with an assignment. So let's say that this was due on the 12th or the 19th, make it tomorrow. The second that this is due, it'll start tabulating late or not late. Even if this, like, if there's no submission, it's just gonna be like, look, whenever you input the grade is when we're gonna put that in. So be very careful whenever you are using those rules, those late rules, because it is. And so, like, automatically apply a grade for a missing submission, grade percentage for missing submissions, 100% update. Okay. So let's do missing. Well, it's missing, and now they have 100. Like, they got 100% on that assignment. Well, oops. I don't want them to get 100% on something that's missing. I want them to get a 0. Update. We're going to delete that. And we're going to say it's missing now. And it pops back to 0. So whenever you are using this, make sure that you set the late policies up at the beginning of your course rather than the end of your course. Otherwise, as you could see right there, I had to do some finagling just to get that one assignment to pop. And it's really old if you have to do all of them for all of your classes. So policies get set up at the beginning. What else is there? Learning mastery, individual view, gradebook history. Gradebook history is really nice because it will show you for a student what you've done to their grade. So like this says like, hey, this is literally their current grade. These are all the things that you've done to it. So you went from 0 to 1.5 to 5 to 1.5 to 3 to 3 to 10 to 10 to 10 to 10. So, and it tells you when this occurred. So if you know that like you messed up at, 9 o'clock, perfect. Here it is. 9 o'clock, you're golden. Yeah, that's Gradebook. View actions. You can import and export. I wouldn't really import a Gradebook, but you can do whatever you want. Calendar. Because now we have assignments, right? So a calendar will sit there. We do have to enable set calendar. But the calendar will go through and be like, hey, these are the things that were due on this day. So let's see if I have a 2:30 intermediate. Nope, don't have a calendar for that one. December? Nope, all right. So the calendar goes through and says like, hey, these items are due this day. So this day we're going to do the final. Make sure that it's in on that day. You also have the agenda view, which does the exact same thing. This tells you the things that are coming up, as well as letting you like create something new. It shows you the week view. So it's due at midnight on tomorrow. And then you can always pop back and forth, hit today. So the calendar is really nice. You can add events. So events you got to be really careful on. They need to be added to the correct calendar, not to your calendar, but to the course's calendar. And that's just a way for you to be like, hey, like Thanksgiving break is this week. Just kind of a reminder for them to really like help them navigate the course so that they're not surprised. Again, though, if you notice, this is unpublished, so this gives you a giant, big old publish button here, but you can always go into the Canvas tutorial itself and hit publish. Now it's published, the world can see it. I'm going to unpublish it. Oh, the end of course quiz. Right. We need to import that. So let's say that you have something on Commons that you want. So we are going to import from Commons. We're going to do that end of course survey. And of course, we're going to pick this one by T-Craw. And we're going to click on it. We'll be like, yeah, I like this one. Import and download. And this one will tell you, hey, what course you wanna what course you wanna throw it in? Well, I want it in this one, this one, this one, and this one. And I want to import it into the course. Now then, they do tell you it might take a while before you get to see it. But it will show up. So let's go back to courses, Canvas tutorial. And you're like, but it's not here. Remember, if you have a quiz, you need to add it. I'm going to indent this into 3 levels. Be like, hey. And now it shows up in modules. Student can click on it and start the survey. If you do notice, this survey is worth 10 points. If you want something worth extra credit, make it worth 0. Assignment group, I want this worth the same as a quiz. And save. Go into speed grader, of course, and then you can assign 10 points. So now it's worth 10 points of whatever grade. If you pop into grades, it'll say that the end of course survey was completed, but it will not actually give them a score. So we're going to change that to a 1. Boom, hey, what do you know? And then this right here is saying that, hey, you have a group of assignments that isn't worth anything. And if you want to fix that, you go back to the assessment sandbox, go back to the assignment group, imported assignments, delete. Yes. And so now your total is still 100% with no extra groups around. If you don't have those percentages, you can always go up here to the 3 dots and say, hey, assignment group weights, turn it on or turn it off. And it does a total for you just to make sure, like, hey, make sure you hit 100. And I believe that is Canvas in a nutshell. Thank you for joining me. If you got other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to anybody else. Campus is full of individuals that know Canvas inside and out, and those that are struggling to learn it just as you might find yourself struggling to learn it. So, if you run into any questions, just ask. Someone will point you in the right direction or just answer it themselves. So thanks, and have a fantastic day, night, evening, morning, whatever. Bye.